All right, for my wall hanger piece, I am going to use the stencil and the silkscreen, the cutter set, and of course this is made of MDF, so you can bake it, and the powder. And then some tools that you'll need that didn't come in the kit are paint or whatever you want to use for the silkscreen. Okay, so I have some color shift. The color here is Black Flash. It's one of my favorite colors. It's kind of like a antique gold color. It's interesting how it comes out. Kind of bronze, dark, but with that flashy gold in it. I have an applicator because I'm going to show you how to color this. It's going to be fun. And I'm going to use Sculpey Primo Opal because I kind of like this color. It's translucent. It has some flash inside of it. What I didn't grab, let me think. Nope, I'm good. I'm going to be using the paint, the powder, so not a lot of extra stuff. So first things first, you're going to need to break off some of this and get it conditioned. So surprisingly, you don't need that much clay for a project like this, but I am going to take about this much to just get started, and I'm going to go take it to my pasta machine and roll it out flat. I am only going to put clay behind the flower part of this. That means I don't need all of this, so I'm just going to make a mark here and here so I can cut off kind of the extra because I do have other things I want to do with the clay. So I'm just going to silk screen this piece. And then you get to decide how you want the silk screen direction to go. Oh, that looks kind of nice. Just making sure that this is firmly attached. And then, since my big squeegee is not here at the moment, it's in my other room, I'm going to grab one of these little squeegees that by the time you see this should be listed in the shop if you need one. They're nice and rubbery and smaller than the big one that we sell. All right. Had a little crud on there. And this is a liquidy paint, which is fine. You just have to gauge. Like, I don't need a ton of it. But if you do happen to take more than is needed, you can always kind of swipe it back into the container. Take a peek, make sure you've got good coverage before pulling the whole thing off. And there we go. Now I'm going to go wash my screen. If you're new to this, always remember that washing the screen is an absolute must when you're finished. Otherwise, the little fine holes in here can get clogged with paint. All right, while I wait for that to dry completely, we're going to work on the hanging parts, which I'm going to make a flower and the 2 crystals to hang from the bottom of my mobile. So I have just enough clay for that. And for this, we're going to use the stencil. So this is pretty fun and easy. Just stick it to your clay, maybe roll over it or press, definitely press hard to make sure that, that's my kitty cat making noise on the other side of the room. Make sure that it's stuck down there, and then we're gonna use the powder. So be careful when opening. Powders tend to be very fluffy. And this is what I'm gonna use my applicator for. And I like to kind of swipe from the cap. You can maybe pick some up. It just depends on how heavy-handed you are. I'm gonna have to go get her in a minute because she's being crazy over on the other side of the room. But yeah, we're gonna swipe this powder all over the stencil. Okay, once you're done with this part, then we'll be ready to remove the stencil and cut out our pieces. This is a very nice metallic powder. It has actual metal in it. It's not just mica. So it's going to be very flashy and sparkly, which I like for the crystal. All right, so we'll just gently peel back the stencil and reveal this beautiful. If you press the stencil in there, you get a texture and the pattern. My clay is very soft and definitely liked to get stuck to this tile. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. And I did that to make it a little easier now for when I cut these out, because I'm not going to bake on this tile. This is a work surface tile. And what I want to do, probably to make this ultimately the best, is put this on the tile I'm going to bake it on for the cutting. Excuse me. So here's our flour. I'm going to lay these out before cutting just to make sure everything fits properly. Okay. This is where I like to use a tool like an acrylic block. That way I know I'm getting even pressure on the whole cutter. And the, this clay, this Primo Opal clay has particles in it, so it can be a slight, what do I call it? It's not hard, it's just, you'll notice maybe after I pull up these shapes that it can have little thingies kind of sticking out of the side of the cut out parts, and that's just the little pieces of foil that are inside here. This is what I'm talking about. They're kind of like large chunks of glittery plasticky stuff that are inside the clay. That's okay. So now I can take this, because it's mostly a translucent base, and I can mix these scraps back in here and make beads, which would be great for hanging on here. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Kind of like marble the silver right into the clay and grab a couple bead pins and make some beads to use with my hanger. So I'll set that aside for a minute and finish that in a couple minutes. And then how are we going to do this part? So let's pull this up. All right, and we're going to put this behind our MDF piece here. So for baking, let me get another tile. All right, so I got another tile to put this on, and I've got my MDF piece. I'm just going to kind of center it up where I want those designs to show through and press this down. And then I got an X-Acto blade so I can cut the clay around the design. And pull this out. Now, I do have clay over here. And what I want to do is pull this up so I can show you how I'm going to make sure it stays attached. So I have my flexible blade to pick this all up from the surface. These bits on the side here don't need to be here because they're not part of the design. And we are going to get some crafting glue, white glue. You can use Weld Bond. This is a great one. This is called Crafter's Pick, the Ultimate. They call it a water-based super glue, but whatever. This is the brand. So I'm going to take this that I've already kind of pressed down and made sure it fits in my spot here, and I'm going to glue on the back. And I'm going to do this prior to baking. You don't need a lot. So I'm going to put it on the back of my design, kind of thick. It does dry clear, so don't worry about it getting, into your design. And we're just going to press this right back over the clay. And we're going to leave that here and let it dry before we bake it. And of course, go wash out your brush. Now, I told you I would share with you a fun way to color your MDF. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to use the powder. So for this, I'm definitely going to tap off the excess. And I'm going to mush the powder into the surface finish of this MDF piece. And it's going to be really pretty and subtle. It's going to go with the drop hanger things that we made and the beads that we'll make in a minute, and just be very pretty. You can do this to both sides. You could do it to the back side after it's done baking. Because this is going to be a wall hanging, I'm not too concerned about sealing it afterwards. You really only need to seal things that people are going to touch, that are going to come into contact with skin, or like a jewelry item you would definitely want to seal if you were coloring it this way. But I think it's going to be fine because I'm just going to hang it. All the clay that we're using is also translucent if you're following along with the types I'm using in this project, or if you want to use a different translucent color, that's awesome. And then you could even hang this in a window and make it like a sun catcher, because the designs will show through when the sun hits it, when the light hits it. So this is just another way to coordinate and kind of give it I like it. It's a soft look. This is a Zen project, kind of like bamboo and soft, naturey looks. So to put powder over wood is kind of like staining it. That's why I like this idea. All right, so I'm going to cap this. It's got a slight blue tint to it, blue and silver. But look, so now it's blended together and not so stark as it would be if I painted it. So that's done. We're going to bake these pieces. Let me make a couple beads. All right, if you've known me for a long time, you know that I have a super sophisticated tool for making things curved in the oven. And that is an empty, oversized can that I have attached a base to with epoxy sculpt. This is the 2-part clay that hardens overnight. And I made a flat foot, so that it would stand up on my baking tray. So this is how I bake curved things. We'll just set that off to the side here. And I'm going to stamp the design onto this. This is Sculpey bronze clay, and I think because I'm using this, the cork that has like a blue sheen and a blue sparkle to it, the color here is going to complement it well and go with the hardware. So we're going to go ahead and roll this stamp into the clay. And I'm going to use my rolling pin. And get that nice fine line design. And then I am going to cut out a section of this to make my flower. And put it on top of this can and just kind of gently. This is going to be a 2-part baking process. I'm just letting you know now because we need to make the slide parts on the back of this, but I really want it to be curved so that it fits nicely over the wrist. This is a large bead and you don't want it to be, just think about these things when you're constructing. So I don't want it to be flat and then when it's sitting on my wrist, it'll stick out on the sides. I want it to curve over my wrist. So I'm going to bake this. I'm also going to give it a center. I want to have a center for this bead and I want it to be stenciled, and I think I'm going to use a little bit of this clay that has the bronze kind of swirled into it. That's what this cutter would be for. So let's make sure it's going to fit. Lay the stencil on it in a good spot. I think right there is kind of cool. See, this doesn't have to be difficult. And you can make decisions on the fly too. Right, so I'm just going to put this pretty powder on the stencil once again. All right, so here we go. We'll just remove that stencil, cut out a little circle. And place it right in the middle of this flower. For later. And then you can decide, do you want to use more embellishments? Do you have other things lying around? I know I do. So I decided to use some aluminum cap. Okay, I had to cut there for a minute. My phone decided that I didn't have enough room to do more video. So I use these aluminum cabochons. They're hot fix on the back. And I used a tool that is meant for like, I don't know, for diamond painting and stuff like that, where the end of it is actually sort of a low-key wax, and it will pick up and put down things of this nature. It's kind of sticky, not super sticky, but sticky enough to pick up something lightweight like that. And then you can just use it to put down your hot fix items. So that's what I used there, and now I'm gonna bake all of this stuff so I can show you how to make the back of the slide.